Okay, I think this is working. Perfect. Hi guys, my name is Rhys. I work at Monster Scout Reservation. I am a secondary education social studies major, which I study at Millersville University. Pardon. Basically, all that means is I am studying to be a history teacher. But under social studies is more than just history. It's government, it's anthropology, which is the study of cultures, it's sociology, which is the study of society and like human interactions. It's a lot of things. So I was the Native American Village Director at Musser in 2018 and 19. Yeah, 2018 and 19. And because I'm a social studies major in education, I was lucky enough to take an anthropology class on the indigenous people of North America. Indigenous basically means native people, people who were originally here. That's what indigenous means. So I'm going to refer to Native Americans as indigenous people because I find the term to be a bit more respectful. There's lots of terms that have been used to describe indigenous peoples on this continent, but the safest bet is to call them indigenous. If you know if an individual is from a certain group, such as the Lenni Lenape, it would be good to call them Lenape. Or if you know they're Dakota, you would call them Dakota, like, oh, she's Dakota, or he's Lenape. So honestly, when you interact with an indigenous person, just ask how they would like to be referred to, and just do whatever they say. It's very important to respect people and use the terms they want to be addressed or described with, if that makes sense. Alrighty, so getting into it, today we're gonna do Beat of the Drum, which is a bare elective adventure, but this is for anybody. Anyone can tune in. So I'm gonna try and do screen share, and we are going to see. Can I do this? Yes, I can do this. Haha. I did it. Okay. Y'all should be able to see this. So, hoping that this actually works. Please work. Okay. So, as you can see, hopefully, here are the requirements, right? So the first one is learn about the history and culture of American Indians or other indigenous folks who have lived in your area long ago. Since this is Cradle of Liberty and our indigenous people are the Lenni Lenape, I'm going to talk about the Lenni Lenape soon. And then oh goodness, why is that? The second requirement we're going to do is make a craft similar to one made by Native American Indians or indigenous people. Alrighty, we'll get into that later. I got a nice craft for y'all. And then the fourth one is visit an American Indian event or an event presented by other indigenous peoples, which I'll explain later. I got some powwow videos that I think y'all will like, and that should satisfy that requirement since we're kind of all stuck inside recently. Okay, so getting into the Lenni Lenape. So the Lenni Lenape are the indigenous folks for Cradle of Liberty. So Cradle of Liberty and Monster Scout Reservation is like roughly in this general area. I don't know exactly specifically because of the scale of the map and whatnot, but the Lenni Lenape, their traditional homeland, is called Lenapehoking. I do apologize about my pronunciation. I'm trying my best, but it's Lenapehoking. So that means, so this shaded area, right, that's Lenapehoking. So this is where the Lenni Lenape lived. So this includes eastern Pennsylvania, as you can see, they got all of this, and where Musser and Cradle of Liberty is. You got a little bit of northern Delaware, pretty much all of New Jersey. You got a little bit of Long Island, and then some of like southern New York. That's where the Lenni Lenape lived. So it's quite a big area that the Lenni Lenape call home. And this geographic, so this location diversity, creates a lot of diversity within Lenni Lenape as well. You know, you got some traditional woodlands full of, you know, game and deer and, you know, growing crops and stuff. But then you got some folks that live, you know, more on the coast. They live in Jersey. Jersey is still woods and whatnot. Same thing with New York. But if you look at the map, right, the Lenni Lenape had access to rivers, lakes, streams, and they also had access to the ocean. So there can be a lot of difference between, depending on where a Lenape person lives in their diet, for example. And then getting into village life. So these are some images from the official site of the Lenni Lenape. They currently live in Oklahoma. We'll get into that later. They have a website called DelawareTribe.org, I believe it is. So these are where these images are from. It's always good to learn about indigenous people from indigenous people. So I like to use their site and hear it straight from them. So this is a scene of a Lenape village. So as you can notice, you got men, women, and children, of course, and then you got wigwams, which is their traditional housing that they lived in and they built themselves, of course. And then you can kind of see their clothing. So this scene, right, to explain it. So clothing, right? The Lenni Lenape, their clothing was made of, different animal skins. So predominantly, it was deer skins. So, you'd go and hunt a deer. You'd take the skin. The women would cut off all the fat and meat. You would tan it. And tanning involves whole process. So, to get this like nice skin, or like I guess you'd call that a loincloth, or like a ribbon shirt, moccasins, leggings, like pants. You would, scrape all the fat and meat off the deer skin, you dry it out, and then there are certain roots out in the woods that have this thing called tannic acid. Tannic acid helps you tan a hide, basically make a hide go from this is, deer skin to being leather. So that way you can make, very nice ribbon shirts and moccasins and things like that. So their clothing was predominantly, made from deer skin. So this is just a typical scene. A lot of times villages will be close to a water source, always need clean water, and then we'll kind of dive down into this village scene as well. And then remember, I was talking about all the rivers and the streams Lenni Lenape had access to. So they made these things called dugout canoes, and they were very skilled in doing this. So dugout canoes, as you can see here, they were made. So this guy, they have a fire, right? You get a tree, you knock the tree down, right? You want a certain kind of tree because every type of wood is different. Nature Nick knows more about that. But they would set a fire. So they would, the fire would help them burn and chip away into the log so they can make the dugout canoe. And this was a very labor-intensive process. You got the guys chiseling, you got the guy, one of the folks watching the fire. It's a whole thing, right? And then, you got your little tool right here. It's like a stone axe, it looks like. So there was a lot of labor involved in making a dugout canoe. So back to wigwams. So wigwams are what the Lenni Lenape lived in. It's the structures they made. So most folks are thinking, what's a wigwam? Like, what is this thing? So this is the start of a wigwam. So to make a wigwam, Lenni Lenape would take saplings, because saplings are very flexible. They're not a tree. Like, I don't know if you tried punching a tree or if you hugged a tree before, but trees are very dense and they're very solid. It's very hard for, you to bend a tree. Like, you can't bend a tree in your hand, but a sapling you can bend. So they take a bunch of saplings and you would bend them and tie them together with sinew, which is like a type of string. It's made from deer intestines and other tendons of different animals, predominantly deer. Deer were the main food, like game animal for Lenni Lenape. So you got the saplings, right? You bend them, and then you kind of make a dome almost. And then you got the ones, going up to the sky, like these. You got these. And then you got other ones that you put around to help secure it. Now, a really cool thing, and it just shows the skill of the Lenni Lenape and other indigenous folks. So when they dug these holes to put the saplings in, sometimes they would put rocks in them. And now you're thinking, why would you put rocks in a hole with sapling? Well, they didn't have concrete, They didn't have something to make it like real solid, like concrete. But putting the rocks in makes it so much more difficult for, like, if a storm happens or anything, like high winds, whatever. It makes it much harder for that sapling to get pulled out of the ground. So the rocks kind of act as like a concrete. It helps keep it solid, keep it stable. And then this is what a finished wigwam looks like. So you have all the saplings, right, providing the overall structure. And then if you know what a cattail reed is, it's these little reeds that grow in like marshy areas and has a little bulb on the top. They take cattail reeds, they would weave them together to make pretty much waterproof mats. Like, this was a lot of time and effort and a lot of skill to gather materials, make the cattail reed mats, and then they would take chunks of bark, and then they would layer bark and cattail reeds to make it watertight, essentially. And you could be in here and stay completely dry. As you can see, it's a little dark in there, so like you have protection from the sun. Wigwams were very well designed and very well built. Built. So a well-built, wigwam could survive a hurricane. You have to remember, indigenous people have been living in the Americas for thousands of years, so they knew how to take care of themselves. They knew how to they knew how to thrive in their environments. So you and I, we know what a hurricane is. Like, we've lived through hurricanes. Indigenous folks like Lenni Lenape in the Northeast had to deal with them too. So they built things to withstand hurricanes. They knew what they were doing, So wigwams are a very impressive example of that. And then at Musser Scout Reservation, we have an example wigwam. Ours is not fully authentic because we don't have the bark and all the cattail reeds and like the mats. Again, it's very labor intensive and very skill based. But we just have a wigwam that kind of give you a sense of like what it's like inside. So in a wigwam, you can have a whole family, mom, dad, kids, whoever. You can have storage. Typically bedding would be deer skins and be a little elevated. At Musser, we put benches in because we use it as part of the classroom. But wigwams were very comfortable. You could have a cooking fire in it. You could have room for storage. Wigwams were a very, very useful housing structure. And then the Lenni Lenape, they didn't just, run around and hunt and everything. Like, bears, turkeys, pretty much any kind of game birds, so pigeons, geese, elk. You also have, elk and deer. Deer were the main thing. So the Lenni Lenape hunted and fished, but they also grew things. Typically, the women were gardening and the men were out hunting. We'll get into that a little later too. But this is what a garden would look like. So, you have some posts, marking where the garden is, and then you have some grapevines typically, or something, you kind of put something in between the posts, and, you got a little walkway, and this is where you would plant all your stuff. So the Lenni Lenape and other indigenous groups of the Northeast planted corn, bean, and squash. They did this because corn, bean, and squash, the idea was the plants would help each other. So you're thinking, how would plants help each other? So corn stalks, right? Everyone's seen a field of corn. They go very straight and very tall, right? Well, the beans then have something to grow around. So they grow around the corn stalk. And then the squash, if you've seen squash, covers the surface, right? Covers a lot of ground, lots of roots. It helps keep the soil secure so all the crops help each other. And we tried growing some corn, beans, and squash, and I think some other stuff at Musser. And this is kind of what the early stuff looked like. It was quite beautiful, quite nice. And then a cool thing about Lenape Gardens is it wasn't just the women helping out, it was the kids too. So the kids, they would have a platform next to the garden. The kids would lay real flat on it. And the kids would have stones, and they would basically throw stones to scare away chipmunks or squirrels or anything that would want to eat the stuff in the garden. You didn't have, like, you're living in the woods. There's animals all around you, So the kids, they pass time and they help out. Basically, they would act as kind of how we use scarecrows or other things to scare away animals. The kids would do it. Lay flat, throw rocks, have some fun with it, right? And then, so Lenni Lenape were also very skilled craftsmen. The women made pottery, they wove mats, they made clothing from animal skins, they made moccasins, the men made tools out of, that's a good time to transition back to me. Okay, let me figure out how I can not do screen share anymore. I think that did that. I think it ended the screen share. Okay, I think we're good. So the men made tools, right? So they used everything they had, right? So some tools were made out of stone, some were made out of animal bones, right? So I I have some deer bones. So they would use bones from deer, from pretty much any animal that was useful. Again, they used all different parts of the animal. They were very ingenious in how to repurpose different parts of animals. So, oh goodness, okay. The men would make tools, they'd make weapons, they'd make arrowheads, they'd make clubs, but tools, so stuff like this. So I have a hoe for a garden, so you can plow and, plant your crops, and then a rake to help you clean up, deal with weeds, whatever you want to use a rake for. So the rake, these are deer antlers, right? And then this would be sinew or something else to, tie it around. And it's just, average old stick. So a rake could look like this. It's using antlers. Like Nature Nick said last week. The deer in the spring, they shed I don't know what the right word is. They lose their antlers and then they grow new ones. So, you have antlers around the woods. So you can use this as a tool. And then I believe this is the shoulder blade of the deer. So, you got a deer, right? You hunt a deer and you got some good meat to eat for a while, and then you can use the skins and you can use the intestines to make sinew, so you can, make moccasins, and it kind of acts like a thread. But then you can use, the shoulder blades for making another tool, a hoe. So you can dig into your garden and you can plant all those crops. So they used everything. I really want to stress that. They used their surroundings in a very ingenious, very, how do you say? It's just in an amazing manner. Okay, so let me get back to screen share because we still have more examples. Okay, I think I did this. Oh, now I did it. Okay, perfect. So getting into that, the Lenni Lenape and other groups in the Northeast, skilled craftsmen, right? They made all these tools out of stone, out of bones. They made pottery for storage. Really, really skilled. Okay, here it is. They also made this thing called wampum. So you take these special shells and you carve them down to make little beads. And this was like each bead, I think I read it was 12 to 16 hours of labor. I might be wrong. I can't totally recall, but it took a lot of labor. And they would make wampum beads. So these were used belts, wampum belts. So these were used for trade as like a currency. They were used to kind of, I guess you could say, codify or write down treaties. They had messages, special meanings. So wampum was a very important part of the culture. And they had all kinds of designs. They had, really whatever the artist wanted to make, they could make. Different colors, got the white, and I think it's like a purple or a black kind of bead. And then I believe this one. So these are from the museum in DC. I forget what it's called, like the National North American Indian Institute, something like that. I don't remember the name. My apologies. And then some were used for treaties. So I believe this one is the wampum belt that they handed to, I think it was, I forget which treaty. I can't recall, so we're not going to get into that. But these, so it says here, these are from the Haudenosaunee. The Haudenosaunee, also known as the Iroquois. It's just better to call them the Haudenosaunee. Means the people of the Longhouse, that's what they call themselves. So the Lenape made these. The Haudenosaunee, in New York made these. Pretty much all the indigenous groups of the Northeast made wampum belts. And as you can see, they're quite beautiful and quite intricate. Like this took a lot of skill and time to make these. Okay, so now I need to get back to me. So I apologize. I'm still trying to get used to the system. Okay, so we mentioned how the men did some stuff and the women did other stuff. But here's a key difference in Lenni Lenape society compared to ours, like everyday American society. It was matriarchal, while ours is patriarchal, tends to be. So what does that mean? Matriarchal means the women are in charge. A patriarchal society means the men are in charge. So a matriarchal society, like the Lenni Lenape, the women were in charge, right? So the men didn't run the household. It was the women. So, husband comes back from hunting. He would present everything to his wife. She managed the resources. She manages pretty much the entire household. And when a child is born in the Lenni Lenape, they belong to their mother's family. So, for example, me, my last name's Wallace. That's my dad's last name. Well, if I was like Lenape, I would belong to my mother's family. So I wouldn't, you get what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't belong to my father's family. So women were in charge, and also, like, especially elderly women, elders, they were, they basically, people need advice, when they need leadership. Even the men who were like in charge, like of war parties or like the village, as sachems. Sachems were elected, kind of. So basically, whoever was the most popular, best leader would be a sachem in the Northeast. But he still had to listen to the women. He still had to listen to the women elders. So men had some power, but at the end of the day, Grandma Ma was in charge. So that's the matriarchal society as well. Trying to think what else we can talk about the Lenape. We talked about the villages. We talked about their clothing. We talked about hunting and fishing. We talked about their tools. We talked about gardening. And we talked about it being a matriarchal society. Oh, so I mentioned that the Delaware.org site is from the Lenni Lenape in Oklahoma. So unfortunately, because of colonization and a lot of unfortunate events in history, the Lenni Lenape went to Canada. Some of them went to Canada, and others eventually made it to Oklahoma. So Oklahoma was set up as Indian territory. And I say Indian territory because I don't like referring to indigenous people as Indians. I don't like using that term. But it was set up as Indian territory. So the US government basically forced different Native American indigenous groups to live in Oklahoma. So today, the descendants of the Lenni Lenape today live in Oklahoma. The Lenni Lenape can also be called, some people call them Lenape, some people call them the Delawares. There's a lot of terms. Again, me, an indigenous person, ask them how they want to be referred to. That's just the best way to show respect and all that good stuff. Okay, I think that covers requirement 1 pretty well. If you want to know more, with your parents' permission, you can always visit the Delaware tribe.org, I believe it is. That's the Lenape themselves. They have all kinds of stuff. They have stories, they have resources, they have different stuff like that. So you can always learn more there. And you can always just Google, with your parents' permission, of course. There's lots of information out there on the Lenape because now people are preserving the stories, preserving the history, preserving the culture in more recent decades. Okay, yeah, I think that covers that pretty well. Second requirement. So let me get back to screen share. So 1 second, please. Okay, I'm getting the hang of this. I'm proud of myself. Okay. So requirement 2, if you recall, was make a craft similar to one made by American Indians or indigenous peoples. So the craft I guess we'll do is, so Native Americans, indigenous people, my apologies, indigenous people were very artistic, right? All people are artistic, and indigenous folks of North America were the same. So they made petroglyphs. That's the big word, petroglyphs. It basically means cave drawings or paintings, or it's most commonly referred to as rock art because it's not just done in caves, it was done on rocks all over. And this is all over North America. The indigenous people did this. They did it in PA, they did it out west, they did it pretty much everywhere. So I want you to get a piece of paper or something else you can draw with. You can get pencil, crayon, marker. You can get, I guess you can draw on iPads now. If you got that and you want to do that, go ahead. But find something you can draw with, however you want to do it, physically or electronically. And so petroglyphs, rock art. So here are some examples. So indigenous people would draw scenes of hunting. They would draw like religious or supernatural figures. You got a medicine wheel here. Got different animals, guy on horseback, hunting said animal, while other scenes were, again, more religious. So we got some figures. This is out west, so I don't quite know what these figures are, but, like these are different styles. I wanted to get stuff from like all over the country. Sometimes they would tell stories or legends. Some are very intricate. And as you can see, the styles vary on the artist, you know? Like there is no one way to draw a deer. There is no one way to draw a person or a horse or, you know, a spirit or a medicine wheel or anything. Like it was, rock art is very, and petroglyphs are very varied and very unique to the area, the indigenous group that's making them, and all of that good stuff. So here are some examples. So you can make your own rock art on a piece of paper, since we're all stuck inside. But you can do that, and that will satisfy that other requirement. And then the very last requirement. So, you know what? I think I'm just gonna play the video like now. So these are from powwows. So the first one is grass dancing. So I will show you that one. And then I think I'll show fancy dancing, just like chunks of it, so I can explain what you're seeing. So there's lots of different dance styles in amongst indigenous groups in Native North America. Some are social dances, some are religious. So at powwows, there are competitions between dancers, but it's also a place for indigenous folks to celebrate their culture, celebrate their history, and all kinds of stuff like that. So this is grass dancing. So grass dancing is from the plains, right? So grass dancing, the idea is to mimic the flow of the grass. So that's why it's very like regalia. It's not a costume, it's regalia, all right? Never, never, never call what this gentleman here is wearing a costume. This is regalia. This is part of his culture. So regalia is the proper and polite term to use. So he has lots of heated stuff. He has feathers. He has his regalia is very flowy, right? The idea is for it to mimic the movement of the grass. And then the story goes that there was this boy who had one leg that was longer than the other. So he couldn't really move around too great. It was very hard for him. So the story continues to say that he was on the prairie in the plains watching the grass flow, right? Just all by himself, right? And then the creator talked to him and basically said if he performed this certain dance and made this regalia and he, you know, did the dance, that he would be healed. So remember, the boy had one leg longer than the other. So with grass dancing, you hop to the beat on one foot and the other foot does all kinds of different movements to help mimic the flow of the grass. So dancers always step onto the beat. That'll be key for fancy dancing later. So that's what you're gonna see. And that was just one of the stories for the origins of grass dancing. There's all kinds of different stories because different storytellers remember different things, or there's different oral traditions amongst different groups. So this is grass dancing. And I don't know why. There we go, there's the audio. So you can see he's hopping on one foot and using the other to do different movements, kind of mimic the grass. He has all kinds of beautiful parts to his regalia. Very flowy, flowing regalia, like I said. And notice he's stepping to the beat. So he's listening to the singers and the drummers step onto the beat and do the different movements. And all these other guys are going to join in too. So it's like one big competition. A lot of powwows, you know, the dancers will compete. And you see how his movements are very slow, they go together, very good movements. And everyone has different regalia. Regalia is up to the dancer, you know. Different dancers have different patterns or styles or colors they want to do. So it's all unique to the individual dancer. So this is grass dancing. So I will post the link, and with parent permission, you can watch the full thing and you can follow that link. And then again, with parent permission, there are all kinds of powwow videos. So here's another one recommended. So you can always search more powwow videos as well. Okay. So this is fancy dancing. So fancy dancing, if I remember correctly, it originated from the Wild West shows way back in the day. So the showmanship of fancy dancing is great. It's one of, it's one of the newer styles, and compared to the other ones, like grass dancing has been with indigenous cultures for we don't know how long, probably thousands of years, centuries. Like it's been around for a very, very long time. Fancy dancing is a little newer. As you can see, they have more, a lot more feathers. What's the technical term for that? It's like I don't know how to describe it, but he has feathers and everything on each shoulder. They have all of this, like the back train and everything on their back. They have more stuff in their hands. So fancy dancing, there's a lot of showmanship, and it's an extremely fast dance. So these drummers are, the beat is very fast, and these dancers have to step and keep pace with the beat from the drummers. So sometimes the drummers and the dancers play a game to see if the dancer can keep up with whatever fast beat the drummers are doing. So fancy dancers wear a lot more, and as you can see, I don't know the term. When it gets faster, they keep up. There's a lot of showmanship. It's very attention grabbing. And as you can hear from the drumming and the singing, there's different songs for different dances, and there's different songs among all the different indigenous groups. Always be mindful of differences and pay attention to things like that. That way you can learn more. And then they're keeping up with the beat, and they're performing on a powwow as well. A lot of showmanship. I will post the link to that one as well. Again, please have parent permission to go through that. I don't know what that beeping is. I apologize. I'm at home. So there we go. So those are the requirements for the Bear elective adventure beat of the drum. Thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully I will see you at Mustard Scout Reservation this summer. I'm very excited. I hope you're excited as well. Stay tuned for updates and more information. Hopefully I see you guys soon. So now I need to figure out how to stop this recording. So goodbye, but you might see me for a few more seconds as I figure this out.